Hello and welcome to Fire Headlines, where we discuss the hottest topics in fire service news. I'm your host, Samantha Didion. Today we're joined by Randy Groom, the recruitment coordinator for the Western Fire Chiefs Association. With nearly 40 years of public sector experience, including roles as a city manager, Randy now helps WFCA find top executive professionals in the fire service. So, Randy, welcome to Fire Headlines and thank you so much for joining me. Let's go ahead and start this conversation with talking about the executive recruitment program at the Western Fire Chiefs. What can you tell us about that?
So I've been working with the Western for just about 3 years now. I'm the recruitment coordinator for our executive recruiting program. We recruit chief officers for departments across our member states, across the Western U.S. And that includes recruitments for fire chief, assistant fire chief, deputy chief, division chief. We restrict our work to just those positions. That's who we are. It's what we do. It's the people we know, and it's the network that we have. And we have partnered with agencies across the West, including cities, counties, special districts, any fire service agency we're open to working with and helping them to find their next leaders.
And what does that process typically look like if a fire department's, looking to take advantage of this? Do you go in and talk to them or, kind of walk us through that?
Sure. So when we partner with an agency, there's several phases that happen. The first phase, and really one of the most important phases, is to meet with the department. That usually occurs initially remotely, as with many things these days, we do it over Zoom. And then as long as the agency is supportive of it and open to it, it's important to me to actually go physically be on site. And that helps me to meet with department staff, community leaders. It will depend upon the position we're recruiting for. If we're recruiting for a fire chief position, that's often a pretty broad group of stakeholders we want to talk to. That may include the board members or city council members, city manager, or whoever the leadership is of that organization, the hiring authority that makes that decision, department staff, and that can be literally from bottom to top. I will meet with command staff, administrative staff, and often we'll go out to the stations and sit at the kitchen table with the crews and just talk with them about their department, their views, their philosophies, their opinions, what they would like to see, their hopes and fears, all of that. And then if it's a fire chief position, we'll get out into the community, talk with community leaders, business leaders, really get a broad input on what folks are hoping to see in their next fire chief. If it's for a deputy chief, division chief, that kind of a position, those discussions will often be more confined to the department itself because it's really more of an internal decision. And if they want us to get out and meet with other folks who have input, sometimes we meet with neighboring agencies, with allied agencies that they're very involved with. That whole process is really critical for us in drafting our ideal candidate profile. And that's the filter that we create, that we then pour all of our candidates through and see how they kind of get through that filter, because it defines what the agency is looking for, what the city or district is looking for, what the community is looking for. So that initial phase is very important, getting out, getting to know the department. What are they all about? What's their activity? What are they looking for? Are there very particular needs that they have for the person that they want to see come into this position, so that we know what we're looking for? Then we create all of our outreach materials, and that will include the recruitment brochure, as everybody's very familiar with, that people used to always get in the mail, maybe not so much on paper anymore, but that recruitment brochure that tells you everything you want to know as a potential candidate about the community, the department, the broader organization, the benefits and compensation, the expectations, qualifications. And then we start getting submittals of interest from potential candidates. And what I think is somewhat unique about our program, very unique about our program, is that when people submit their interest to the Western, it stays with us for that initial phase. The hiring organization is not aware of names and places of candidates at that point. And what we have found is that provides a very safe space for potential candidates to explore the opportunity. They get to talk with us, they get information from us. We have a lot of exchange back and forth. all in the effort to help them decide if this is an opportunity that might really be a good fit for them, and if they're a good fit for the organization. We have some very candid conversations, and if candidates are truly well positioned and well qualified, we want them to know that. And alternatively, if an opportunity just isn't a good fit for them, we often tell them that very candidly, and candidates appreciate that. They don't want to go through a process for nothing, and they particularly don't want to put their name out there and create all the drama that can come with that. So we accept those submittals of interest. I partner with a technical advisor, a current or retired fire chief in the Western. That person and I do the interviews together. We interview all the qualified candidates, and then we present back to the hiring agency a blind summary of those candidates. So everything they want and need to know about each candidate except their name, where they are, and anything that might identify them individually. And that's a little different for candidates. It's a little different for the hiring agency. But again, it provides that safe space for people to explore this opportunity. So then working with the hiring agency, together we decide who they want to bring forward to the next step. And it's just an interesting process because they're making those choices without names and places, which really don't matter at that point. They want to know everything else about the person's knowledge, skills, abilities, certifications, experience, personality, character traits, everything else about them. They just don't need to know their name yet. And so for the candidates that are then pulled forward into the subsequent phases, the candidates know that and they accept that, okay, now my name's going to come out or potentially come out, and we'll deal with that. But they've really committed to the opportunity at that point, and they know that they might be a good fit for the organization. So up until that point, that's some really unique qualities about the way that we do things. From that point forward, it starts to look a little bit more typical, a little bit more like what people would be used to if they've gone through a recruitment like that. So the hiring agency will determine what the final phases are going to look like. Lately, what we've seen is a 2-day final process, with day one being site visits, meet and greet, kind of almost a social opportunity for candidates to get to know the agency and for the agency to get to know them a little bit. And then that will roll into the second day, which in most cases is panel interviews, usually multiple panels. And we help the candidates prepare for that. We help the agency prepare for that. And then they go through that final process of selecting their top candidate the way that they normally would.
Yeah, thank you for that overview of how you assist these fire departments recruiting for such a high level position. Now, I want to ask, you just mentioned that you support both the department and the applicant. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think this is another area where the Western distinguishes ourselves from other recruitment firms because we put as much emphasis on the candidate as we do on the hiring agency. In many cases, these are folks we know. These are often our members. They're people that we value and we want to support. So we're not only working for the hiring agency to find their next, right chief officer, but we're also working with the candidates to help them as much as we can. So we will provide them with resources. We don't spoon feed them. Candidates have to show the initiative to want to do well, to want to do homework, but we will support them in that. They will often ask us for information about the agency. If the agency doesn't already have links to important documents and resources like their budget, strategic plans, master plans, standards of cover, annual reports. If the candidates don't readily see those and have access to those, we'll make sure we get those. And we'll work with them on kind of generally what to expect. We don't let them know details that we shouldn't about, panels or questions or those kinds of things. But that doesn't mean we can't generically provide that kind of support, because we want to see them do well. We want the candidates to do well. We want the hiring agency to find the right person. What we do for the hiring agency in the final phases is very much up to them. Some agencies are very sophisticated. They have a large HR staff. They're very used to doing interviews and practical exams or mock presentations. They may have certain preferences for how they process the kind of final selection for their candidates. So we will certainly let them do that if they're comfortable doing that. Or if they want our help with that, we are very happy to help structure questions, presentations, mock exercises, and we will also be present if they want us there. I think back over the past year, it's been a real mix. In some cases, the agency takes that final step and they're very comfortable with it. They've got it. We've done what they need us to do, and we let them run through the final phase. In other cases, they want us there. Matter of fact, I'm headed up this weekend for a final phase of a hiring agency. They want me to be there for the meet and greet and the tours that they're doing, and then to actually facilitate one of the panels on the second day, and then to meet with the city manager as the city manager works to make their final selection based on all of the input. So as far as the hiring agency, we're very flexible. We're in it from beginning to end. If they don't need us for anything in particular, that's great. We'll stand by. And if they want us there, it's part of the service we provide.
It's great to hear that your services can be customized or tailored to each department's specific needs. But I have to ask, what would you say is the biggest challenge you encounter when recruiting for the fire service?
So recruitment and retention in the fire service is one of the first things you'll talk about with an agency when you sit down with them. And that is often at the firefighter level, at the entry level, and trying to recruit and retain, employees younger and earlier in their careers. What we do with recruitment in the fire service happening at the chief officer level is a little bit different. I think we've been through some waves. Certainly the pandemic created an environment of its own that fortunately we're kind of past. Somewhat more recently, we've seen another wave, I think, that was more related to housing costs and mortgage rates, because when we talk about recruiting at this level, we're recruiting nationally and we get candidates from across the country. And so for many folks, this is not only a professional change, it's a personal change. They're not only changing their career path, they are changing their family situation and moving not only themselves, but a spouse, children, whatever the case may be. So some of the concerns are different. And that's why I say that some of the larger issues like housing costs and mortgage rates can affect that. You may decide, this isn't a great time to change your life and move your family to another state and sell a house and buy a house and do all of those things. So those things can have an impact. I've seen that wave start to kind of die down. I think people realize if they're going to make a career change, they're going to make it. They may not love the fact that interest rates right now aren't great, but they also think, well, I'll refinance when they get better. So how long do you put off a career move that might make a substantial difference in your overall career based on those factors? So we see some of those kinds of waves. I think the other thing in general is, are people comfortable making that kind of a big change, moving to another organization, taking on the role of a chief, whether it be a move from battalion chief to deputy chief or deputy chief to fire chief. It's still an increase in your responsibilities. And certainly those moving to a fire chief position, you're now the one in charge of this organization, and that's a big step. So you don't necessarily have a large pool of candidates like you do for an entry level position, because these are people who really understand what they're doing and what they're asking for, and they need to be prepared. In our recruitments, I do not tend to see a lot of folks who are just dipping their toe in the water. I think the folks who apply for a chief officer level position know what they're doing. If they're going to put their name in, they're serious about it. Sometimes circumstances change. I've had candidates who have gotten promotions while we're in the middle of a recruitment, and they're kind of suddenly happier to stay where they're at. And that's great. For them, that's the right answer. We want candidates to be in the right place in their lives in terms of making a change and to find the right person for the organization. And if all of those pieces don't fit together, we don't need people in the process just for the exercise of it. These tend to be folks who understand what they're doing, understand they're putting themselves out there, and that at the end of this road, it could involve a big change for them.
Now, in terms of marketing for an open position, such as a deputy chief, say that department has it posted on LinkedIn and Indeed, but they're not seeing the applications come in. Do you have any tips or tricks for departments that are facing that kind of problem?
That's where our service is also a little bit unique because we have the power of the Western Fire Chiefs behind us, and that includes the Daily Dispatch, which is a very widely read publication, and I think generates more candidates for our recruitments than anything else. Maybe more than other things combined. It varies from time to time, but people out there read the Daily Dispatch. We include recruitments for all sorts of fire service positions in the Daily Dispatch, but when we are doing a recruitment, it is featured. You'll see a banner headline across the top. For those that are familiar with getting the Daily Dispatch every day, when you open it, there's something across the top, whether it's talking about the Ignite Symposium coming next year or talking about some of the telecommunications programs, or if we're running a recruitment for an agency, once or twice, maybe 3 times during that recruitment, you'll see that banner pop up, and that gets people's attention because it's right at the top. So we do all of the normal things. We advertise in the same types of publications that you mentioned. And then the Daily Dispatch is very important. And then we've also developed a network. And I have a couple different ways of doing that. I use LinkedIn, which has been pretty successful for us, and the Western uses it also. And then I have my own network of potential candidates. I think I send direct emails out to maybe 2,000 individual recipients who are generally, I will say, captain and above in the fire service. And if folks let me know that they want to be aware of opportunities, I add them to the list, kind of regardless of where they are, who they are. And so about 2,000 people get a direct email from me confidentially that no one else sees that they get it. And it talks about the opportunity, provides them all the appropriate links. So that combination of resources has worked pretty well for us. We've had good pools of candidates. It will often come down to the specifics of the hiring department, what they're looking for, where they are. I've had some agencies that we've worked with who have some very constraining factors. I mean, I can think of one, I won't mention them by name, but I talked to candidates about this 3-legged stool that they had to be able to comfortably sit on before we even talked about being a fire chief. And that was housing cost, winter weather, and remoteness of the community. And these are all life issues, right? You and your family have to be willing to locate to this place that may have some very interesting kind of constraining factors. So we're going to have a smaller pool of candidates for that. Naturally, just because some folks realize, oh, this is a big change. I'm not sure that this one's for me. And we will also find that we have both internal and external candidates. We treat them all the same. Everybody has the benefit of everything we do. And in that particular community, the ultimate successful candidate was an internal candidate who was already sitting on that 3-legged stool. So we knew that they would be comfortable with those factors and simply had to work with the rise to being fire chief.
Right, I understand that fully. Is there anything else that you would like to add on this topic before we let you go?
I want more people to be aware of this opportunity, both on the hiring agency side and on the candidate side. Let's talk to candidates first. If you are out there and you are a fire service professional who has aspirations to move into a chief officer position, or maybe you are already in command staff, but you want to move to a fire chief position, make sure that I know that. Email me at randy@wfca.com. Let me know that you want to be added to my individual email list. So if you happen to miss the day where something gets advertised, you'll still get a direct email from me, and so you won't miss any opportunities. Certainly not every opportunity will appeal to every person. We totally get that, but at least you'll know that you get them. And when that right opportunity pops up, you'll be able to let me know that you have an interest, and we'll make sure that you're in there. As far as the agencies, we really just want more agencies to know that we're out there doing this, that we can come alongside them and help them find their next fire chief, but also their next assistant deputy or division chief. For many agencies, they've been through a variety of recruitments. Some have done them internally and processed, everything themselves. Some have hired third-party recruitment firms. There's a lot of great firms out there. What we remind people of is we only do chief officers in the fire service. These are our folks. These are the people we know, that we know how to ask the right questions. We have the network already established. We're not doing a public works director today and a finance director tomorrow and a fire chief the day after that. This is all we do. And also by keeping that narrow focus, we are able to provide a very high quality of service to our candidates. They get very personal attention from me, and I really work to take the load off of the organization. I don't come in and then expect an HR person to do all of my work and I just kind of come in and out. I'm really with the agency from beginning to end and really help them through the process. And I think what we hear back from the agency is that we have helped in these recruitments. That's one of the most consistent things I hear, is that we provide a very high quality service, a very personal service, and they feel like they got something unique and kind of special for their money that they invest in this process. So we want both sides to be happy. In every recruitment, I'll tell candidates, only one person's going to get this job. And it's really unfortunate because I get to know a lot of great folks who I really want to see do well and find their next chapter. But I hear back from them also that even if they didn't get the job, they appreciated the process. They appreciated the way we treated them and the value that we placed on them. So I want both sides of that equation to feel like it was a good process.
Absolutely. And if someone's looking to utilize this executive recruitment program, can they just email you at the email that you mentioned?
A couple ways. They can email me at randy@wfca.com. They can also go to the Western's website, look under services. It will talk about our recruitment program, give them a little bit more information about how we do things. And we're happy to talk with anybody. There's an agency we're doing a recruitment for right now that I started having conversations with a year ago. And they were still trying to figure out what they were going to do. They did some restructuring, but after all that was over, they remembered us and they came back. And so now we're actively working with them on a recruitment.
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you for those insights, Randy, and thank you so much for joining me on the Fire Headlines podcast.
Great. Glad to be here and look forward to working with more candidates and hiring agencies out there.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media. If you have a question for the panel, please reach out to us at fireheadlines@wfca.com and let us know what's on your mind. We'll see you back here next week for more Fire Headlines.